It was a crisp, chilly fall evening at the Brunswick High football field. The air hung still, heavy with the kind of silence that made every sound feel amplified. Beneath the dim, flickering glow of the stadium lights, Jude, Quinn, Bryce, and Brendan gathered to play a game of Fox and the Hounds. Jude eagerly claimed the role of the fox, while the others became the hounds tasked with hunting him down. After giving Jude 5 minutes to hide, the hounds set off in pursuit. Their search led them to the larger bleachers, where they spotted Jude crouching in the shadows. With a shout, they gave chase. But Jude was fast, too fast. He slipped out of sight, leaving them frustrated and unable to track him down. Deciding to regroup, the 3 hounds left the field and texted Jude to meet them at the nearby pond. But Jude didn't have his phone. He never saw the message. Hiding behind a trash can near the edge of the field, Jude peered out cautiously, his breath shallow and quiet. The lights buzzed faintly overhead, casting strange, uneven shadows across the bleachers. He spotted them, Quinn, Bryce, and Brendan still searching. At least, it looked like them. They moved through the shadows in jerky, unnatural ways, like puppets on invisible strings. Their silhouettes stretched and warped under the lights as they paced back and forth. Jude pressed himself closer to the trash can, gripping its edge as he tried to calm his pounding heart. Then he noticed Bryce. His arms swung freely as he moved, the bright green cast he'd worn all week nowhere to be seen. Something about it felt wrong, but Jude shoved the thought aside. Maybe he'd taken it off early, or maybe Jude had just imagined it. His attention shifted to Brendan, and a wave of unease prickled up his spine. Brendan was climbing the back of the bleachers, his body moving with an eerie, mechanical precision. His limbs stretched in strange ways, pulling him up and down the supports in a slow, deliberate rhythm. It was hypnotic, almost inhuman. He didn't seem to struggle or hesitate, his hands and feet gripping the metal bars with unsettling ease. Brendan climbed up, then slid down again, as if rehearsing the motion over and over, his head never turning to look around. Jude stared, his breath catching in his throat. His hands gripped the trash can so tightly, his knuckles ached, but he didn't dare move. The longer he watched, the harder it became to convince himself it was just Brendan messing around. There was something so wrong about the way he moved, like his body didn't quite belong to him. Jude's eyes darted to Quinn, who was pacing near the bleachers. Quinn's movements weren't much better. He jerked his head to the side now and then, as though listening to something Jude couldn't hear. His steps were uneven, dragging slightly, yet there was a methodical purpose to them. It was as if Quinn was acting out a part, but he didn't quite know how to mimic being human. Jude ducked behind the trash can, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might give him away. He pressed his back against the cold metal, squeezing his eyes shut for a moment to steady himself. But when he peeked out again, they were still there, still moving, still searching. He didn't understand why, but the sight of them filled him with a crawling dread that had nothing to do with the game. Clapping and calling out to bait them, Jude drew them closer before darting away, forcing himself to focus on the thrill of the chase. But their silence unnerved him. No laughter, no banter, just the sound of their footsteps crunching against the ground and the occasional creak of the bleachers. Their pale, featureless masks gleamed faintly in the flickering light, and Jude found himself unable to look directly at them for too long. He ran and hid, clinging to the belief that it was all part of the game. But deep down, the unease gnawed at him. Eventually, Bryce, Quinn, and Brendan returned from the pond, chased him down, and ended the round, the tension in his chest finally easing. At least for the moment. As they prepared for the next game, Quinn and Brendan took off to hide as the new foxes, leaving Jude and Bryce behind. Jude, still catching his breath, recounted his experience to Bryce. You guys were relentless, he said, his voice shaky despite his grin. Brendan, he was climbing the bleachers like a spider or something. Bryce froze, his face darkening with confusion. Jude, we left after we first chased you, he said quietly. Jude's smile vanished, his stomach knotting as the words sank in. His mind replayed what he had seen, Bryce's free-swinging arm, Brendan's eerie climbing, Quinn's jerking movements. If they weren't here, who was? The field fell silent again, the flickering lights casting long, sinister shadows over the empty bleachers. The chill in the air felt deeper now, seeping into Jude's bones as the unease twisted into something far more terrifying.